Hey everyone, we are going to be continuing to solve ratio problems, only this time we are going to solve ratio problems using equivalent ratio tables. So we're still going to be using the idea of comparing two numbers using a fraction, but now we're going to organize this information as a table versus part whole and a tape diagram. We are going to be using what is called scaling. So multiplying or dividing two related quantities by the same number is called scaling. So what we are going to be doing is using equivalent ratios or equivalent fractions to help us solve these problems, and we're going to use multiplication and division to help us do that. This first video is going to be scaling forward. So example 1 says a recipe for 1 apple pie calls for 6 cups of sliced apples. So here's one part of my ratio. Here's the other part of my ratio. Now, what you'll notice in these problems is it's not a part whole type situation. It's 1 apple pie, the whole calls for this much in the recipe, and we can compare those two numbers. So for every 1 apple pie I make, I need 6 cups of sliced apples. And you can see in the ratio table, we've created one for you. We went in order, so the number of pies is on top, and you can see the 1 right here. And then the cups of sliced apples come second, and then here's the 6 on the bottom. Now I'm going to look at the next part. It says how many cups of sliced apples are needed to make 4 apple pies. And I'm going to highlight that 4 apple pies in yellow because it goes in the same part of the table, and here's the 4. So now I want to look at this as if it's a fraction, so 1 over 6. And then I want to say, okay, if I have 1 apple pie, how many cups of apples am I going to need to make 4 of them? So how do I get from 1 to 4? Well, this value is bigger, so I'm going to be multiplying. I'm scaling forward, I am multiplying, and I'm going to multiply by 4. And just like we've been doing with all the fraction stuff that we've been doing, all the ratio stuff that we've been doing, whatever we do to one part, we must also do to the other part. So I'm going to multiply the bottom by 4 as well. And 6 times 4 is 24. And now I'm going to answer the question. How many cups of sliced apples do I need? I need 24 cups. In example 2, it says a recipe that yields 12 cups of soup. So that's going to be my yellow, my first number, calls for 19 ounces of beef broth. There's my second value. And I'm going to look at my table, the number of cups of soup and the ounces of beef broth. Okay. So it says 12 cups of soup. There's my 12 in the top part of the box, 19 ounces of beef broth. There is my 19 on the bottom. And now it says, how many ounces of beef broth do you need to make 36 cups of soup? And I'm going to look at my table and I'm going to say, okay, number of cups of soup was highlighted in yellow. So I'm going to highlight that in yellow. And that means that that number is going to go in the yellow part of my table, the top part of my table. And again, looking at these two numbers, 12 over 19, I want to get from 12 to 36. So I'm going to multiply by 3, and then 19 times 3 is going to be 57. So it's going to be 57 ounces of beef broth. And that's my bubble answer. So I'm using equivalent fractions, I'm using equivalent ratios, and I am scaling forward by multiplication. In this one, I took a little piece of information away. I took away that third number. Now we're going to look at example 3 where I make you create the entire table on your own. So it says to make yellow icing, you mix 6 drops of yellow food coloring. So I'm going to put a 6 in the yellow food coloring with 2 cups of white icing. So I'm going to put a 2 in the cups of white icing. How many drops of yellow food coloring should you mix with 8 cups of white icing to get the same shade of yellow? And I'm going to highlight my cups of white icing in pink. And my drops of yellow food coloring in yellow. So 8 cups of white icing is going to be in pink. That means that this bottom one is the one that gets the number this time. So the first two, they gave me the first number, and they wanted me to find the second number. In this one, they gave me the second number, and I'm going to find the first one. So 2 times 4 is 8. 6 times 4 is 24. So I'm going to say 24 drops of yellow. Okay, this was scaling forward to solve a ratio problem using a ratio table. So we were multiplying. These values were getting larger. We were creating more batches, more pies, more cups of soup. Okay, so things were getting larger. We were multiplying. We were scaling forward.